Hello my friends, welcome to another Raggedy Rescue. I'm Jennifer. This one's going to be a little bit different. I've gotten some really good questions on my previous videos as well as some emails, and so I took the ones that I thought might be useful and I wanted to share them with you guys today, and I might throw some other stuff in along the way. So first I want to introduce my little crew back here. I have done about a dozen Raggedy Rescues over the last 4 years, I guess. What really started it was my love of the dolls that my grandmother made. She made these two Raggedy Ann and Andys for my eldest child, and probably about a year ago they gifted these to me, knowing how much this means to me and how much it makes me feel connected to my grandmother. These two were made from this pattern. This is my grandmother's actual pattern, and all of the ones I inherited from her have this little pin with the little pink head on it. It makes it extra special to me. So the whole journey started with this guy. I will put a before picture of him in here. He was donated to a charity that I was volunteering for, and someone else wanted to throw him away. And I took him home because I didn't want to see him go in the trash. And he was my very first effort at a Raggedy Rescue. I didn't do it right away. I just took him home and I sat him on a shelf. He just sat, he was sort of my little mascot, and he was there for years and years and years. So I'm going to talk about him a little bit more because he's a really good example for one of the questions that I'll have in just a minute. This was the next doll I did. I wasn't really following the hair at this point, and you can tell she has a lot of hair, probably more than she needs. And this was the third doll that I restored. The rest of the dolls between this gal and these two that I just recently shared with you, all of those already belonged to someone, and I restored them and returned them. I don't have any of those to show, but if I need any of them for one of my examples, I will insert a picture for you guys. Now that you've met the crew, I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions. This comment was left on how I clean my Raggedy Ann and Andy rag dolls, which is the very first one that I posted, and that was this gal right here. This was from Tatia XYT8564, and she said, I have a Raggedy Andy with the same face as the one you have, and he has I love you embroidered on his chest, and his socks only go halfway up the leg. The stitching is also kind of messy too. I'm wondering if he is handmade. So absolutely he is handmade. You can tell the difference between the handmade dolls really, really easily. So what they're talking about is this little heart right here being hand embroidered. His face is also hand embroidered. If you check out this Andy, his little heart is stamped, and so are the features of his face. The only embroidered features on his face are the ones I added. The commercially made ones, all of those had stamped faces and stamped hearts. The reason the legs came up is this gal right here, her legs are striped all the way to the top. She's handmade. That was the choice of the person who made her. Some of the store-bought ones, the stripes go all the way up, but the patterns that I have show the stripes stopping at the knee. The next comment was on Clean and Mended Andy, so that was this guy right here. This is from the Crazy Cat Lady 2389. I have a Raggedy Ann doll, but she's missing a button eye. I live in the Netherlands. Maybe you know where I can get a replacement eye. And she goes on to share a little bit more about why that doll is special to her. I have restored a couple of dolls that had button eyes, and the ones I did for my sister-in-law, we were missing buttons. They were just like, the buttons were long gone. So what I did was I just went through my button supply and I found buttons that were similar. And in her case, I actually replaced both button eyes, but you could, I mean, they're rag dolls. If you want, you could have mismatched button eyes and it would just make it more unique to you. So there's no reason not to just mix and match or replace both eyes. You can definitely do that. When I replace eyes on a doll that's already made, what I do is I actually use embroidery floss and I sew from the front. So I will put the floss through the doll and like a little X. I will tie it on, and then I just put a tiny bit of E6000 on the back of that button because I don't want that button coming off if a kid plays with it. So yeah, that's how I deal with missing buttons. Not all Raggedy Ann and Andys have button eyes, but some of them do. So if you have a missing button, that's one way to do it. The next one is from Lena Bean. She wants to know, how did you replace the color in the eye where it disappeared from the brightener treatment? I love the multicolored hair. So that was this guy. And if you watched any of his videos, when I was treating the stain, which he's still a little yellow, but he's so much cleaner than he was. I used a brightener that ended up, it actually faded his legs a little bit, and it bleached out one of his eyes. And the way I dealt with that was I used a Crayola fabric marker and I colored in, let's see if you can get really close up. I just colored over the embroidery floss. I didn't know if it would work. I was really careful not to touch the fabric. I figured if it didn't work, I would just take the floss out and stitch new eyes, but it worked great. It's color fast, and I really like how bright the blue eyes are. This one is from Linda Fishman, and this was left on my community page where I was asking if anyone had questions. She wants to know how I handle rips and holes in the fabric, especially on the face. And this one is a really interesting question because the first two dolls that I restored, their faces were just completely destroyed. So these two and the gal with the braids, they were all manufactured dolls. I have done a bunch of research, and I'm pretty sure the two Anns were probably made by Applause, the toy company, and that's going to be at like 1983 and after. But Andy was definitely a Knickerbocker toy, and Knickerbocker was like 1960s through 1982. So you can tell because his hair was totally different from their hair and matched all the pictures I found online of the Knickerbocker toys. So he just had full-on holes in his face. And remember, this was the first one I ever did. It's experimental almost every single time. I'm just trying to make them look nicer. So he had holes here, and you can see where I just matched the fabric. Probably not my best stitching. I wish I had invested in maybe some silk thread or something really fine, maybe use like bottom line to do the stitching on this. But I matched the fabric the best I could and stitched over it, and then I re-stitched his mouth. I've since gotten much better at hand embroider on top of an already stuffed doll. It's a little tricky, but I've definitely gotten better at it. So that was his repair. This gal, she was only my second rescue. I actually replaced her entire head. When I got her, she had a rip from inside her hairline all the way down. She had a very similar face to this guy where these buttons were attached, and so her face had ripped along that button and then around. And there was no way for me to sew that button eye back into place. So since this is all experimental, what I did was I designed her face in my embroidery software, and I stitched out a new face on my embroidery machine. So she literally had a head transplant. So you can see the little line right there. It's covered by her dress. Unless you undress her, you can't tell at all that that her head doesn't exactly match her body. I wish I'd put a little less hair on her, but she's very cute. Also, I wish I had made the pupils a little bit bigger, but I love that she's rescued, and that's another way to deal with really bad rips on the face. The other thing that I have done, if the tear is not horrible, like it's not from dry rot and it's just very small, I will just whip stitch it back together, because my whole philosophy about these is that Raggedy Ann and Andy, they're rag dolls, and rag dolls were traditionally made from leftover fabric, and just they are meant to be loved. They're meant to have a little wear and tear, and they're meant to be mended. So if they have a little mending mark, that's just one of their scars. That's just part of their story. So that's how I deal with that. The last comment I have is from Sharon Boltman 5529, and this is actually a suggestion. She says the Andy I had a snap to hold his hat in place. So I mentioned in the video I made of this guy that the instructions for the patterns that I have say to tack the hat in place with thread, and so that's what I do. When I was working on this guy, I really didn't want to do that because I was like, oh no, I don't want to sew it to his head. So here's what I did. Yeah, I put a little clip, just like a little Wonder Clip style clip inside of his hat, and then I just attach it. It's not the best solution. It works okay, but it's not the best solution. But I love the idea of having snaps, because then especially if the dolls are going to a kiddo, that gives them the ability to dress and undress Andy a little bit better. And yeah, just have a little bit more options. I've only ever restored 3 store-bought dolls, and it is these 3 because this one, as I said, was going to be thrown away. The other 2 I found at thrift stores. I prefer to work on handmade dolls whenever possible because it makes me feel more connected to my own grandmother, and I love the idea of being able to restore something that a maker created. Because of that, one of the things that I have done the last few years is I've been trying to collect patterns because I want to have all the patterns I can. So if I get a doll, I can match it to the pattern it was made from. So I already showed you the ones my grandmother made. Those came from this pattern. I've done all of my rescues so far from this pattern because every doll I've received so far that was handmade was made with this pattern. It's been really easy to tell. I generally just use the stamp that comes with this there's like a little iron-on stamp for the face to follow for hand embroidery. And if you can match it, you can figure out which doll it is. So that's usually what I do for this. And it's worked great every single time. This is my oldest pattern. It's from about 1940. I've never gotten one this old or this style, but I really want to make at least the clothes for these because I love the little cloaks. I love the style of the clothing. This is the same McCall's pattern, but from the 70s. So I have a 1940s one, a 1970s one, and the one for my grandmother was copyrighted in the 90s, but if you look on the inside, it was actually originally published in like the 1980s. This one was also my grandmother's and just recently sent to me by my aunt who found it in some stuff that had belonged to my grandmother. And you can tell that it's hers because it has her little pin right there. This is the 36-inch doll, which I have not worked on one of those yet, and I think that would be really fun to do at some point. Currently, you can only get Raggedy Ann and Andy patterns from Simplicity, and I believe Simon & Schuster now own Raggedy Ann and Andy characters because there are still books. There have been many books written by other authors since the original books. So this is the only Simplicity pattern that I currently have. This one's copyright 2000. I believe it is very similar to the one you can get now, which is, this is number 9447. It's an older, as I said, it's from 2000. Simplicity and McCall's, same company now. So they're only selling the Simplicity version of this pattern, and the modern number for this is 8043. I do plan to pick it up at some point because I just want to compare the two. That's it for this Q&A. If you guys have any more questions, leave them in the comments, and I'd be happy to do this again at some point. I feel like I was kind of all over the place today, but there's so much to share about this and so much to talk about. And if you're interested, I can talk forever. If you've been watching my Talk to Me Tuesday, which is my weekly vlog, I've been doing that since 2009, you know that I can talk up a storm. And finally, a little disclaimer. I am someone who does this for fun. I'm an enthusiast. I'm not a doll maker who sells dolls or anything like that. I'm basically retired at this point in my life. I have some mobility issues that keep me from standing on my feet for long periods of time. So this is one of the things that I have turned to just keep my life feeling full. I really enjoy doing this. I've done numerous dolls for other people at this point, and I love getting to do that. It's been really fun for me. Only family and friends. This is not like I said, I'm not doing it for sale. It's not a business. So yeah, again, enthusiast, not an expert. Everything in this video is my opinion, and my opinion changes. So if I stumble on a better way to do something, or you have a suggestion that I haven't tried before, let me know, and maybe I'll try it in a future Raggedy Rescue. So that's it. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you guys for watching all of this. I hope it makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed this very different format for Raggedy Rescue. I'm going to leave you guys with some pictures of before and afters, and I will see you next time. Bye.